Policing. This is actually a really interesting story, a promising story out of New York, of all places. So, this is out of Essence Magazine. I know we don't do Essence a lot, but I wanted to talk about this. Oh, whoa. Hang on. All right, let's hold on. This. How do you scroll this up? Okay, wait. Hold on. All right, let's just. Okay. And let me get this asshole out of my face. All right. All right. It says this black working class community policed itself for 5 days. Here's how it turned out. It says what happens when the police step aside and let residents respond to 911 calls. It says an unorthodox concept is being tested out in New York City where neighbors respond to low-level crimes instead of police for 5 days at a time throughout the year. In April, Brownsville in Violence In, Violence Out, a Brooklyn anti-gun violence initiative experimented with the strategy. Sorry, I can't talk today. As the New York Times recently noted in a deep profile of the group, in the 5 days that 911 calls were averted to them instead of the police, neighbors persuaded people to turn in illegal guns, prevented shoplifting, kept a man from robbing the bodega, and stopped a pregnant woman from hitting a boyfriend who had not bought a car seat in a stroller as he had promised. He really should have brought that stroller and that car seat. Organizers believe this strategy could redefine law enforcement in New York. The organization is a part of the Mayor's Office of Criminal Justice Crisis Management System. For the 5 days, unless there's a major incident or victim demands an arrest, officers always in plainclothes shadow the workers. While the BIVO workers respond to lower level crimes on the streets, agencies are also taking an affirmative stance towards improving their community. Quote, offering services like free childcare and addiction recovery, sit at folding tables, distributing pamphlets, and luring passerbys with games, stress balls, and pens. The IVO is a part of Brownsville Safety Alliance, a larger network of both neighborhood and city groups, as well as police officers and members in the Kings County District Attorney's Office. The city is providing $2.1 million in funds over the next 3 years to help link the local organizations that participate most frequently in the Safety Alliance so that they can work cohesively throughout the year. As what do residents think of the unique concept of self-policing? While some community members remain skeptical, many seem hopeful about the possibilities of reducing police violence and inculcating their neighbors into the harsh criminal justice system. According to BIVO Assistant Program Manager Nyron Campbell, a majority of residents are saying we feel more safe, we can walk without feeling anxiety. It's also occurred after shockwaves went out through Brownsville neighborhood after the 2019 Kwesi Ashon shooting, when the beloved t-shirt vendor who suffered from paranoid schizophrenia was killed after he swung at an officer with a chair at a nail salon. Brownsville residents have increasingly been complaining about the rising aggression from police, alleging that officers were grabbing men off the street to arrest them for minor offenses. Brooklyn experiment mirrors similar efforts around the country were popularized after protests swept the country after George Floyd's murder at the hands of police in Minneapolis. So, yeah, it talks about comparable programs are also underway in Eugene, Oregon, Denver, Colorado, Rochester, New York, among other places. So, while I see this as a positive, right? Like I was talking about reform, more needs to be done. This is why I am an advocate of defunding the police on the road to abolition. Um, and I'll say this: as far as police goes, I'm not anti-police. I'm anti-United States police. I'm anti oppressive arm of the state. You know what I mean? Like, for instance, from what I hear, they have a great relationship with police in Cuba. But that's because they are literally beholden to the people, right? Not like here, where police are beholden to capital. They're beholden to the corporations. So this is why I think it's absolutely important that we rethink policing in this country and redo it in a way that actually serves all of us, not just the small few at the top. One of the things that I was looking at was that we are constantly under attack because of what I was talking about regarding slavery. They want us back in chains. And they've been putting us back in chains ever since, the ending of, the slavery, ending of slavery. And so they want us back in chains because they know that they can make more money by not paying us or paying us extremely little. Because that's how capitalism operates. While I do say it's a good thing for the citizens to cover and to cover the minor offenses that are being done, one of my biggest questions is, why in the world are they not alleviating the poverty issue? We all know that one of the biggest antidotes to alleviate crime is to alleviate poverty. If I was desperate, if I was really desperate to self-preserve myself, and if I didn't have any other options, then you do something illegal in order to save yourself. But then what do you risk? You risk prison. You risk jail. But then what are you also risking? You're also risking putting yourself back into that prison industrial complex that employs slave labor, aka slavery. So you're opening yourself up to that. But the thing is that what other choice do you have? You're literally under duress. Either run the risk of being a slave in the prison industrial complex or starve out here in the streets. And people are like, well, just get a job. But these jobs pay starvation wages. So what is somebody to do? Take the risk. And then if the risk actually succeeds, then you get the reward of actually having, resources and food and shelter. That's the thing. And a lot of times, some people feel like that's a risk worth taking because that's the system that we have. Because we live under duress. And you guys, I don't have to pull up the definition of duress each and every time. You guys know. You guys can go back in some of the past streams and see that I actually explain the definition of duress. And because we're constantly under it, then people are at their wits' end. And so if we really want to alleviate crime, the poverty issue must be addressed. This is why housing, food, healthcare, and education should not be paywalled. I said what I said. It shouldn't be paywalled. Because if you put a paywall there, that means there are going to be some people who don't actually have it. And yes, you can say, well, there are certain social programs, but those social programs are extremely stringent. And then those social programs only cover people to a certain level. And then they leave a gap. And then other people are okay. But then in between that gap, you have people who make too much to get help, but don't make enough to help themselves. That's the problem. Now, I agree with communities policing themselves and then taking the resources that otherwise would be used for police and invest it into them so that they can have housing for all, so that they can have adequate food and not have food deserts, so that they can also have education. But in the end, if they don't go all the way, it's still just a reform. My thing is take what you can get, right? Because that community policing, it's saving somebody from not getting shot to death. But while you have that, keep going. Keep going. Don't stop. Right? Organize your neighborhoods. Organize them so that we won't need them at all anymore. Go beyond the scope of reform. Go beyond it. So if you're in New York and you're in that neighborhood, keep organizing. Don't stop. Do not let them give you the okie doke and say, oh, well, we have you guys doing this, so we can still keep police. We can, police reform. No. No. That's not good enough. They shot too many of us. They killed too many of us for us to say, okay, no, don't do that. That's all I got to say. But that is a promising story. And just to let you guys know, if you guys have not, I highly encourage you to look up 10forjustice.com. It is a great resource because it actually shows what actual public safety looks like. And it's 10 Demands for Justice, The Road to Abolition. Now, Nick of RBN is one of the co-founders. One of the other co-founders is in the chat, Zoya. Give her a shout out. Zoya is a wonderful, very brilliant person who I highly recommend following her also on Twitter if you can. And so these are some of the ones. Defund the police and reallocate resources to impact communities. Demilitarize the police. Eliminate discriminatory policing, prosecution, and sentencing. Institute complete law enforcement transparency and accountability. Independently investigate all police crimes and abuses of power. Install community representation, oversight, and safety measures. And strategic counter-protest violence. Apologize and provide reparations. End the war on drugs. And end carceral punishment. So this is what it is. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the link in the chat for you guys so you guys can share this far and wide.